The Shiur today is a profound sugya, and I will do my utmost best to try to make it as clear as possible. But it's really a sugya amuka, a yeshivish sugya and a halachic sugya as well. So what we're discussing today is Tnai and Omdnã. In this week's parsha, we learn the story of Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven that came before Moshe Rabbeinu, and they said, "We have herds of animals, so we would like to stay be'ever hayarden, in the fertile fields of the plateaus and the valleys." And Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Will you let your brethren, the other Shvatim, fight the battles and you will stay there?" They said, "No, Chas v'Sholom, it's not what we meant. We will spearhead the battles. We will be the scouts. We will fight just like everyone else. But ultimately, when we all will be victorious, we would like our homes to be Me'ever Yarden." And then Moshe makes it Tnai. Im ta'asun es hadover hazeh, then you will have your nachli, your achuza Me'ever Yarden. Ve'im lo ta'asun kein v'chotosem la'Hashem. It is from this posuk that we learn that we need a Tnai kaful. And if the Tnai is not a Tnai kaful, it isn't valid. And all the other halachas of Tnai we learn from Tnai Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven. Tosfos Kedushin Vav Amud Beis Mem Tes Amud Beis Tshuvas Arosh Siman Lamed Daled. And it's also a psak in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Reish Zayin Choshe Mishpat, once again Reish Mem Vav and Choshe Mishpat. Sometimes we don't even need a Tnai at all. Sometimes it is enough just Gilui Das. Just if the person mentions what his intention is, that is enough to be mevatel the kinyan, to invalidate the kinyan. So when do we need a Tnai? When do we need Gilui Das? And when do we not even need Gilui Das, just we rely on Omdnã? So let me make a very short introduction. The concept of Omdnã, same word, but it has two different meanings in Chazal and in the Poskim. And this is a very common phenomenon in Shas and in Halacha. In many sources, I can't go into this at length, I'm just mentioning Shavuos Lamed Daled, Shavuos Mem Vav, Sanhedrin Lamed Zayin. Many sources, Omdnã is what we call in the modern language circumstantial evidence. The story of Shimon ben Shotach. He saw a man chasing another with a sword in his hand. They rushed into an abandoned house. Shimon ben Shotach arrived 10 seconds later, and he sees a horrible scene. Person is breathing his last breaths, his throat slashed open, dying. And the one holding the sword is dripping blood. Reb Shimon ben Shotach tells to the Retzeach, to the murderer, "I could assume what happened, but I have no evidence. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of all the rest." And then the person perished in a short while. A venomous snake killed him. That is called Omdnã. And there are many different examples of Omdnã. That is Omdnã number one, circumstantial evidence. Omdnã number two, is reasonable assumption when we need to assess and evaluate what did a person have in mind when he signed the document, signed the contract, made a kinyan. What did he have in mind? That is also called Omdnã. But that is the Omdnã trying to assess, evaluate, and assume what people have in mind. That is Omdnã number two. Today we're dealing only with Omdnã number two. Not even the entire spectrum of Omdnã number two, because in Omdnã number two there are also two different situations. One is How do we assess the intention of a person in certain circumstances? Person writes a document that he gives all his possessions to his wife. Chazal maintain it's totally unreasonable, totally unlikely that a person has children and he would leave them nothing and give everything to his wife. So we assume that his intention was to give her authority over his possessions until his demise, until she passes away. But it's not a kinyan gamur. That is one aspect of omdanah. The other aspect of omdanah is the only one we will be dealing with today is when a person does a proper kinyan and then circumstances dramatically change and we assume that under these new circumstances he probably wouldn't do what he did and he wouldn't promise what he promised. That is omdana number 2, and that is relevant. So the question is, how do Tanai and omdana interact? When do we need a Tanai gomur, Tanai kofel? When don't we need a Tanai at all? So Toises Kedushin Vava Med Beis Mem Tes Med Beis Derosh, as well as I mentioned, and many other Rishonim say sometimes all we need is Gilui Das, and sometimes we don't even need Gilui Das. The two most striking examples are, one is the Gemara Kedushin Mem Tes Med Beis. A person sold all his possessions, his house, his car, everything, because he planned to move to Israel with Nefesh Benefesh. And then something changed in his personal life, personal circumstances, and he's not moving to Israel. So he wants his stuff back. Chazal say, Dvorim shebelev elam devorim. The person that bought his house could argue, why should I believe you that the reason you sold the house is you want to move? Maybe you sold the house for different reasons. Why am I obliged to give the house back? Toises argues, it is only because he didn't say that he's selling the house because he wants to move. But if he would have made that clear, even though he wouldn't stipulate, he didn't make it as a condition in the transaction, Gilui Das would be enough to enable him to turn the clock back and to invalidate the kinyan and to take his house back. Sometimes we don't even need a Gilui Das. That's the case in Ksubas Mem Zayin Omed Beis. So a person signed a ksuba to his kala, and tragically the chosen passed away before the wedding. It's a machlokes tanoi, but the halacha is she does not get to sefes ksuba. Anan sahadi shaloi kosav la elo al menas lekansa. She gets the basic ksuba, which is the tekonas chachomim, bein le'arusa, bein le'nesua. But if he added and promised another $1 million, it is clear to us that if he would know that he's going to die before the wedding, he wouldn't do that. And therefore, it's part of his inheritance and it goes to his family. So Toises brings this in as an example. Sometimes we'll say Anan Sahada and you don't even need to make a Tanai. So the question is, when? When do we need a Tanai Kofel? When is Gilui Das enough, and when you don't even need Gilui Das? Go'ene Basroi, primarily the great Talmidim of Reb Chaim Brisker, Reb Shimon Arab Elchanan, deal at great length in their Sforim. Why do we need a Tanai Kofel? How do we understand this halacha? If a person made any stipulation, any condition in a kinyan, isn't it clear that this is his intention? So why do we actually need the formula of a Tanai with all its details, Tanai Kofel, Tanai Koidim Lamaisa, and why wouldn't we simply say, this is his kavanah? And the Aleph base, the essence, the neshama of every kinyan is Gemar Das. We know that from many sources in Shas, Gemar Das mitzada makna, Smichus Das mitzada koina. So if a person stipulated that I want to be Mekadesh a woman, al menashe titen Mosayim says, and I want to sell you a house on the condition that you're going to give me a gift every Rosh Hashanah, and those conditions aren't fulfilled, then why don't we simply say there's a lack of kavanah? The way I wrote this up, and it's not a Torah Chadosha, I just use my language and my words, but I think it is fundamentally more or less what Rabbi Chanan and Reb Shimon have in mind. But regardless of who says what, I think Yesod HaDovar. And this question is asked first by the Rashba on Gittin Daf Ayin Hey. And what I say might fit in to the Rashba's teretz, his response. But there are two ways to understand the essence of Tanai. Number one, if not for the din of Tanai that we learn from Bnei Gad or Bnei Reuven, we would have reason to doubt. Yes, he stipulated Al Manasseh Titli Musayim Zuz, but we're not 100% sure and convinced that he really wants this Kiddushin to depend on those lousy $200. Person shouldn't be Makadesh an issue for money, definitely not for Musayim Zuz. So we might question his intention. Maybe he just wanted to squeeze out another $200, but it doesn't really mean that if he's not going to get those $200, then he regrets and he doesn't want the Kiddushin. But if that is the Tanai is binding. That is what we learn from Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. But it is only if the Tanai is kekol proteo v'digdokeho. But if not for the din Tanai, we would have reason to doubt, does he really mean it? So there are many types of Tanoim, primarily in Masechet Kiddushin. Al-Menashe Yirtza Abba, Al-Menashe Yirtza Ovich, Al-Menashe Titli Mesayim Ziz, Al-Menashe Sheyerdu Gishom HaMayoim. So many different Tanoim, and not always is the Tanai so convincing and so fundamental and so Shayach L'Gufon Shel Devorim. So it is in those cases that we definitely need a Tanai. But when we are thoroughly convinced that the entire motive and rationale of this kinyan is lacking, then we don't need a Tanai. So if a person clearly said to his neighbors, to his friends, to the purchaser, I'm selling my house because I plan to move to Israel. It's my dream since I was a kid. And then circumstances change and he's not moving, and we are thoroughly convinced that it's a beautiful house. He's been living there for 20 years. And if he cannot move to Israel, he definitely wouldn't want to sell the house. In that case, it's so compelling that there's no need for a Tanai. And sometimes there's not even a need for Gilui Das, and that is example number 3. When a chosan eagerly waits to marry his Kala, and he promises her riches, and then tragically he passes away, Chazal say, we assume that all those obligations and promises were based on the premise that Be'ezus Hashem they will build a Bayis Ne'eman B'Yisrael. Otherwise, and therefore, those promises and those obligations are void, and we invalidate them. So that would be my basic approach, but maybe we delve a bit deeper into this sugya, and there's room to argue that it's not that we question his intentions. No, if a person made a stipulation, we assume he is serious about it. But maybe his seriousness is irrelevant. Maybe the kavanah that is required to give life to a kinyan is only gemardas beguf hadavar. But it is not within his power to tie in kiddushin or kinyan to things that aren't really related to the essence of this transaction. So if a person says, "Harei mekadeshes li al-Menashe Yirtza Abba, al-Menashe Titnu li Mesayim Zuz," it's not the natural state of things that a person wants to engage a woman and marry her for $200. So it's not that we question his intention. Yes, if this is what he said, this is what he meant, but he's crazy. And therefore we say, we totally disregard that intention. The kavanah that is essential to give life to a kinyan is only the kavanah beguf hakinyan. So if the woman happens to have an awful blemish, disease, that would be a question of Kiddushay Tois. By Kiddushay Tois, we don't need a Tanai. But there's nothing wrong with the Kiddushin. He finds nothing troubling with his wife. She is exactly the one he wanted to marry. But he's not getting those $200. It's not that we question the sincerity of his stipulation. If this is a stipulation, he's out of his mind. But if not for the din Tanai, which is a chidush shel Torah, we would disregard that stipulation and we would say, all that is required is sincerity for the etzem kiddushin, and he cannot tie the validity of the kiddushin into demands that are not shayach l'guf hadavari. Those would be the two different interpretations and approaches which I would explain the need for mishpetei tanoim, for the details of tanoim. There's a big machlokes between the greatest of achronim, 2 against 2, different generations. On one hand, Rabbi Akiva Eiger, the Hafla, the greatest gedolim of their time. Tshuvas Rabbi Akiva Eiger Madurat Tinyona Simenun Aleph and Simen Kuvav, Hafla al Ksubis Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph. Against the Beis Halevi and the Or Sameach, much younger than their Balei Plukta. They once again were contemporaries. So the Hafla was somewhat older than Rabbi Akiva Eiger, and the Beis Halevi was somewhat older than the Or Sameach. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger and the Hafla argue that every Mekech is based on the din of Tanai, and therefore, because Mekech Tos, a Mekadesh Eshu Ishu v'nimtza bo Mumin, or shenimtzu boy Mumin. Person made a purchase, and there's a Moomba Mekach. He brought a car, and the car has a broken motor. Doesn't have a carburetor. I don't know. It has tires, old tires. Moomba Mekach Tos, according to the Akiva Eiger and the Hafla, that is Medin Tanai. The Beis Halevi and the Or Sameach says has nothing to do with Nai. It's a Moomba Mekach. According to my understanding, who am I? But I think the Beis Halevi and the Or Sameach are right. Yayin v'nimtza chometz is a striking example. And in Minchas Tshuvos, in various different sources I explained, when there's a Moomba Mekach, the person that was cheated, or maybe wasn't intentionally cheated, but the person who's losing out has the right to be mevatel the kinyan. He has a right to invalidate the kinyan. But he also has the privilege of saying, okay, it's not exactly what I wanted, but I want it anyway, because I got a good price. Yayin v'nim tzechoymetz, the kinyan is botel me'elav, and if he doesn't make a new kinyan, then it's not his. Because yayin v'nim tzechoymetz, you bought wine, you didn't buy vinegar. It's like a guy buying a car, and instead of giving a car, he gets a sack of potatoes. Or instead of giving a car, the guy brings him a horse. But I bought a car and not a horse. Yayin v'nim tzechoymetz is not like nimtza boy mum. Yayin v'nim tzechoymetz, the kinyan isn't chal. Nimtza mum, the person has a privilege, the right to be mevatel the kinyan and to backtrack. So I think Mekach Tos is doimet feili yayin v'nim tzechoymetz, not ladin tanai. But in our ladder, in our Richter scale, we have two more cases to fit in. Top of the list is Yain v'Nimtza Chometz. That's not a kinyan at all. One notch down, Mekachtos. Another notch down, Omdana. Omdana. One more, Gilui Das. Omdana and Gilui Das are closely related. The one is the chosen that died before the chasana. That's Omdana that needs no Gilui Das. The other one is the guy that sold his house because he wants to move to Israel. In these two cases, there is no deficiency beguf hamekach. It's not like mekachtos. I bought a new car and I was given a used one. I was mekadesh a wife, but I didn't know she has some psychiatric issues. If I would have known, I would have thought twice. Or the other way around. I wanted to marry a normal person. I didn't know that he's violent or chas v'sholem, different things. So bitul mekach, there's a deficiency beguf hadover. When we talk about omdana, the problem is in the motive, in the rationale, in the motivation. The only reason I wanted to sell the house is because I planned on moving to Israel. The only reason I promised my Kala $1 million is because I very much hope to build a house together and raise a family together and marry her. So, in these cases, there's no deficiency beguf kinyan. It is only changing circumstances that enable to invalidate the kinyan. Is that medin Tanai? Or is that also more similar to Yain v'Nimtza Chometz? Regarding Mekachtos, I think the Beis Halevi is right. Regarding Omdana, I would be more close to the B'Kiva Eiger's approach. And I would say this is more similar to Dinei Tanai. So up to this point, I just tried to analyze and explain the essence of Tanai, Omdana, Mekachtos, Yain v'Nimtza Chometz. From this point on, we deal with a profound halachic controversy that has huge implications, halacha l'maisa. So most of the shiurim I've been giving in recent months are somewhat related to the coronavirus. Today's shiur as well. I wrote many tshuvas. I hope in the very near future, 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have a new Minchas Osher on Corona. And it's going to be an amazing sefer, more than 300 pages. I've been in such a rush in the past few months, just writing and writing and writing. So this sefer will have some shiurim, I said, many letters I wrote, shmus, and I said divrei chizuk, and most of it will be tshuvas halacha l'maisa. So one section of that sefer will be in Dina Mominus. So one of the questions that were asked by hundreds and thousands in this period is people that planned chasanas and bar mitzvahs and wedding halls and in halls and different sites, and all the plans were dashed because of the coronavirus and because of the government lockdowns. So those halls that already got a down payment, do they give that money back to the people that just couldn't fulfill their plans, couldn't move forward, and all these chasanas just couldn't take place? Or people that gave a down payment for tiulim or for excursions or vacations. So people paid 6 months in advance to a cruise, to an African safari, to a hotel in the Alps, and once again, everything changed. So, do they get their money back? This is associated with the coming 15 minutes of our shiur. So, Toises and Ksubas Mem Zayin Amid Beis, and that's the sugya of a chosen, Orus Shemeis, Loikosav La Ela Almanas Lekonsa. Toises asks a very simple question. Person sold a cow. The cow dropped dead 5 minutes after the purchaser paid for it. The purchaser says, I want my money back. I would never buy the cow that'll drop dead 5 minutes later. The Moicha says, I don't bear any responsibility. When I sell a cow, I don't give a guarantee, a 1 year or 2 year guarantee. I don't do repairs, and I bear no responsibility. This was a totally healthy cow. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took away its neshama as you took possession. I bear no responsibility. Tosfos asks, why cannot the purchaser backtrack? Just like the Chassan says, he doesn't say, but his inheritors say, he didn't promise that money only as he planned, if he would be zeicher to marry his kala. So why can't the purchaser say, I didn't pay for this cow on the condition that I will have no money and no cow? So if I would know that the cow would drop dead 5 minutes later, I wouldn't pay, so I want my money back. Tosfos, Ksubis Mem Zayin Amid Beis, Shittim Mekabetzes quotes the same from the Rosh. There are two sides to this story. So the purchasers say, if I would know this cow would die, I wouldn't buy it. But the seller would say, if you would stipulate that I need to take responsibility, what will happen to the cow? No, I would never agree. I would never agree. So I wouldn't give you the cow. So there are two sides to this coin. And Tosfos says, we do not rely on omdana when it depends on the goodwill of the other party. It depends on the consent of the other party. Mishnah Hamelech Perek Vav Hilchos Chiyah says, I don't understand. Between the Chassan and the Kala, there are also two sides to the story. It's not one-sided. The Chassan promises whatever he promises to the Kala, and the Kala agrees to get married. So, in that case, there are also two sides, and we do go Bosa Umdana. When a person sold his house, and he said he wants to move to Israel, there are also two sides to the story. So now he wants to regret, and the halacha is, if he made it clear that the reason he's selling his house because he plans to move to Israel, then he could backtrack, and he could invalidate that kinyan. Well, there's a purchaser, and the purchaser probably is not happy to give back that house. So what's the difference? What does Tosfos say? There are 6 different interpretations, and each of them has halachic ramifications. The Mishnah Hamelech says something that's very mistaver, very reasonable. The Mishnah Hamelech says, when you sell a cow, and the cow dropped dead, and the lokeach, the purchaser, wants to pull back, then there is monetary loss to the seller. And the seller says, no, I do not agree. I never promised you that the cow will live forever. So there's a hefsed moment to the moicha, lo yazlina bosa umdana. But when this person promised this cow $1 million, she's not losing anything. She's once again open for different shidduchim. She stands where she stood before, tragically, profoundly sad. They both planned to build a house together, a bayis nema b'Yisrael, and lovingly live forever after. But she has no monetary loss, and therefore, aslinan bosa umdana. The same when a person sold his house because he planned to move to Israel. So all we say is you get your house back and you get your money back. Well, it's not the way you planned. You bought this house because you like the house. But after all, you're getting your money back. You're not losing anything. But when a person sells a cow and the cow drops dead, and the purchaser wants to impose on the seller, give my money back, and you have neither money nor a cow, that is monetary loss. Lo yazlinan bosa umdana. Then Asivas Reish Lamed Siv Kotan Aleph takes this a step further, and he says, it's a gemara foreshes in Ksubis that if they did marry, and the chassan tragically died 1 day later, then she doesn't have to give the money back, and she gets those $1 million. So then Asivas says, the havamina of Tosfos that the lokeach could say, I want my money back when the cow dies, is only if the cow died immediately after the purchase, before the lokeach even had a chance to do something with the animal that he bought. But if he took the animal into his possession and he plowed his field and a month later the cow dies, Milsa the Pshita that he can't retract. But how long? Forever? That I give you a guarantee that this cow will live 100 years? So that's Chiddush number 2 in the Sivas Reish Lamed Siv Koten Aleph. Noide Biyuda Madura Kami Yorodesem and Samech Tes writes 3 Chidushim. And all these Chidushim come to reconcile Tshuvas Arash with Tosfos. I just want to stress, Tosfos Ksubas Mem Zayin is also the Rosh on this spot in Shitta Mekabetzes. So it's not only a discrepancy between Tosfos and Tshuvas Arash, it would be a contradiction between the Rosh in Shitta and the Rosh in the Tshuvas. Simala Medalad. The Rosh deals with the question of a Shiur. And between the engagement and the planned wedding, the grandfather of the Kala just left the fold, left Yiddishkeit, v'yotzel atar b'sura. I do not recall whether he converted to Christianity. I don't recall. But he left the fold. And the Chassan and his family were extremely embarrassed and hurt, and they want to pull out and be Mavatal Shidduch. And the Noida B'Yehuda says, yes, they are entitled to do so. And he quotes the Rosh. The Rosh deals with a similar case in which the sister of the Kala left the fold. And the Rosh says, the Chassan has a right to back out. Why? Omdana. So the Noida B'Yehuda asks, but there are 2 sides to the coin. 2 sides. So why does the Rosh paskin that the Chassan could pull out? Noida B'Yehuda offers 3 drachim to reconcile the Sugi and Ksubis with the story of the Rosh. Number 1. Depends on reciprocity. Is it hadadi? So, when the purchaser of a cow argues, I want to back out because the cow died, we need to try to evaluate, to guess. If the purchaser would stipulate with the moicher, if the cow will die, I want my money back, the seller would say, no way. Look for another friar, as they say in Etzesor. I give no guarantees. It's a risk you take. It's a risk every purchaser takes. You buy an animal, you take the risk. Animals, sooner or later, might die. But if the Chassan would stipulate with the Kala, if anything like this happens in your family, I want out, the Kala probably would respond, okay, it's your right. But it goes the other way around too. So if your Zaidi will convert, or your sister is going to go berserk, then I also have the entitlement to back out. So it's reciprocal, both sides. Azlina Bosa Omdana. Suggestion number 1 of the Noida B'Yehuda. Number 2, Omdana cannot invalidate a purchase that was tam v'nishlam. You bought a cow, you took the cow, you stay with it. But when we're dealing with a future obligation, then Omdana is valid. So they were engaged with plans to get married, but they're not married yet. So we do base on Omdana and give the entitlement to back out of a future obligation. Number 3, the Noida B'Yehuda merely argues there's a difference between a Omdana gedola and a Omdana that's not an Omdana gedola. So we assume. And obviously it depends on the norms of the time. I'm not sure our psak would be the same today. To our dismay, so many kids leave the fold, it's almost a plague. But in days of yore, it was a huge embarrassment to the family. So that's a Omdana gedola. But when a person buys a cow, we fairly assume it's a risk that every purchaser takes upon himself. And that's not a very convincing Omdana, and that is why lo yazlinan bosa Omdana. Chem de Shloim Even Ezer Samach Beis Yud Zayin adds on another touch and another knetch. It's more or less in the direction of the Noida B'Yehuda. And the Chem de Shloimeh says, if the purchaser of the cow would stipulate and he would say, I want you to be responsible. If the cow is going to die, I want my money back. Then the seller probably would say, okay, then pay another $500. It's a different price. If when you buy a fridge, you buy a cell phone, you buy anything, and you have two options. You could have a 10-year guarantee or a 6-month guarantee. You pay more for a 10-year guarantee. So the moicha probably would say, okay, you want me to take the risk upon myself, then pay another $500, another $1,000. So we assume there's a good reason that the lokeach, that the purchaser, didn't make that stipulation because he didn't want to pay that extra money. But when we're dealing with a stipulation that's not derech masa umat, and it's not derech hameschar, it's not part of business deals, then we do rely on omdana. So when we come back to our question, a person ordered a wedding hall, and happened what happened, and COVID-19 struck the world, and there's no chasana, and I have no benefit out of this. Does he have the right to say, I want my money back? And my psak is definitely yes. Because according to the Mishnah Melech, there's no direct monetary loss to the owner of the hall. Because I notified you 2 months, 3 months in advance, you didn't have any direct expenses associated with my chasana. I know you need to pay a mortgage, you need to pay workers, you need to maintenance of the building, but that has nothing to do with me. The fact that I'm regretting, I'm not causing you monetary loss. You're going to have a lack of income, but that is not monetary loss. And therefore, yes, he has the right to backtrack. According to the Nesivis, well, I got nothing yet. The Nesivis says that it's only later that he can backtrack. I got nothing yet. It's still 3 months before the chasana. According to Tnai de Biyuda, well, this stipulation might go both sides. So, if the chosan of the Kala's family would stipulate, but if something will happen, some global thing that we can't make a chasana, then we will want our money back. So maybe the guy that runs the hall would say, but if something happens and you can't make it to the chasana, but it has nothing to do with me, then you will need to pay in full. So it is reciprocal. Approach number 2 of the Tnai de Biyuda. Omdana can't invalidate a kinyan that was already made, but it does pater future obligations. This is a future obligation, and it definitely is an omdana gedola, and therefore I feel yes. So the owner of the hall needs to give the money back to the family in its entirety. Would I say the same regarding tiulim, summer vacations? I don't think so, because usually the people that run these plans, whether it's a cruise or a safari or just a tiul, have a lot of expenses many months in advance. They need to order hotel rooms, they need to care about transportation and about boats and vehicles and provisions, and usually these expenses are many months in advance, and therefore I think we need to compromise in those cases, and it is reasonable that the people that ordered those tiulim should, bearing in mind that they did cause direct expenses and there is monetary loss, direct monetary loss, I think in those cases we need to have a compromise. So today we discussed a very relevant halachic issue, and it's a profound sugya. The sugya of Tnai, Omdana, and Bitul Mekach. I tried my best to clarify the concepts.